Welcome to part 2 of my amazing conversation with Naveed Bhatti. Now, if you haven't listened to the first part, please hit the pause button or stop and go back and listen to the prior episode from last week, because listening to both of these parts together is going to make so much more sense and flow so much better for you. The reason why I separated them is because they're long. And I try to keep my shows about 30 minutes or a little less, because I know we like to multitask and listen to more than one show. We continue in this second part to go a little bit deeper, actually quite a bit deeper, and talk about the shadows. Some of the things that most people in sales training programs or any kind of sales training really don't go deep enough on. And I just love the depth and the insight that we bring together through our conversation, because we vibe and we riff off of each other so well. It's one of those things where I had no outline. I just knew that I wanted to focus on some very deep things with him, because he's capable of having those kind of conversations. And for me, it's a total pleasure to get in those weeds and to really dig up some good stuff that'll help you in your sales efforts and just your overall thinking about being a solopreneur and how amazing that is. So I hope you enjoy the second part of my very long conversation with Naveed on sales. And remember, on my show notes page, I will have links to his LinkedIn page as well as his website. You're going to love it. Can't wait to hear from you about how much this has helped you with your sales strategies and closing those deals and making lots and lots of great relationships through those conversations. Welcome to My Solopreneur Life. I'm Terry Pappy, your gracious host, and I am so glad you're here. I have a wonderful episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's have some real talk about what it is to be a solopreneur. All right, Naveed, thanks for coming back for the second part of our conversation. The first part was amazing. I love where we went, because it wasn't just like, here's sales, although we did diss on Sandler a little bit. But, you brought up some really good points. And I always want to have real talk about what it is to be a solopreneur on this show. I mean, that's like my tagline. And one of the things that I think is really important is to address the fears, the internal dialogue that we have as solopreneurs. Because remember, we're sitting at home in our office or whatever, or a coffee shop, and we have nobody around us to reflect, to give us objective feedback, to create a structure around us. We're just kind of out there freewheeling it and trying to figure it out. And in the beginning, because we want our business to succeed, but yet we don't have a lot of guardrails other than maybe some course we took, or somebody we know who did their own business, or we read a couple of business books. That's essentially what we're going on if it's our first time having our own business. When it comes to generating revenue, you've got to sell stuff. I like to focus primarily on service-based solopreneurs, not necessarily the ones that set up e-commerce and all that stuff, because that's more transactional and it's not really who we're dealing with here. This is more about the individual who's putting themselves out there. Their business is who they are. And when you're out there selling or pitching somebody or somehow trying to get a deal done, you're basically selling yourself. And so what invariably comes up are a lot of self-conscious fears and stories and mindset barriers that keep that person from really being confident and growing. And I've done a few episodes on this and around this topic a lot, but I really want to talk to you about what are some of the things that go through people's heads when they first start learning how to become that person who needs to make a sale for their business.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Again, a lot coming up for me as you're laying setting that up, Terry. So I'm going to go back to something that I think everyone first needs to deal with about selling or sales in general before we even get. It's like step point five. It's the pre-step to all the steps. You've got to deal with whatever you've got going on personally about sales. So usually we inherit some sort of a conversation about salespeople or sales in general. We inherit a conversation about it. What I mean by that is, you know, in my culture, it was highly, highly promoted to become a doctor, an attorney, worst case scenario, a teacher, a business owner. Those were the field, engineer, of course, right? I lied to my parents about getting into sales for the first 3 years of me being in sales. I hid it from them. That's how much of a stigma I had. And I had collected evidence. I was working in the IT department at CompUSA, Computer City, that computer store. I was working in the IT department on computer. I repaired laptops, repaired printers. I was a technician, right? Still close enough to my engineering undergrad degree to where I could justify a job that supported. Okay, makes sense. But when the sales manager asked me to come over and move to sales, I was like offended that he even asked. Like, you think I would stoop to that level, like become a sales rep? Are you? I met most of those guys. I still remember their names. And I always thought they were so fake because they were so full of crap. They didn't know what they were talking about. They were selling customers and just getting commissions. The bigger the sale, the better, right? And I knew because they'd come up to me and they'd ask me certain questions, and it was all about them and their commission check and how much they could get paid on something as opposed to what the customer really needed. So my introduction to the sales world was, wow, these are a bunch of BSers. They're hotheads. They're full of themselves, and they're all about them. Now, are any of those things true? Like, does it have to be that way? No, but that's what I kept collecting evidence for. So one thing you have to deal with as a solopreneur, your listeners, you have to deal with whatever you've got going on, your view, your default view about being a salesperson. They're sleazy used car sales reps. Salespeople get a bad rap out there. And look, rightly so. They're pushy, right? They're persistent. There are certain characteristic profiles of a salesperson that are pretty negative, and yet we project that onto salespeople. So now here you are as a solopreneur stepping into something where you're gonna have to sell. Crap. I'm gonna have to be that fake used car, or even the fear of being perceived as that, even though you might know I'm not that. But I can't imagine someone would think that I would try to sell them some snake oil, you know? So here's the thing, and I think this can put it at rest for our fellow solopreneurs out there. What can put it to rest is that, what I discovered in my 20 years of selling, the only time I ever got really nervous or had some fear come up in the moment of, here comes my pitch, here comes my, like, the pitch line, the where you're extending an offer for someone to buy. That moment, what I finally discovered, and I'm telling you, this took, and me telling you this, by the way, disclaimer, may make no difference. You may have to go discover this for yourself. So full disclaimer, okay? But see if you can find these moments. What happened was the moment of discovering that whenever I had fear come up around making the pitch or asking for the sale, I was making it about myself and not about them. See, if I'm selling something that I know is a fit, I know it's affordable, I know it has value, I know it makes sense for you to say yes, and it's clear for me and it's authentic that I'm giving you something that makes a difference in what it is that you're up to, then me asking you to step into that doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel wrong. It only feels bad when I've got some insecurity about what I've got to sell you. Like, if I know this mug is made for $3 and I'm trying to sell it to you for 100, if I've got something going on about the fairness of the deal, or even that you may not get what you're buying, the value, if I'm having to convince you, cajole you, if I'm having to do any of that, then it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for anyone, by the way. Some people are just better at it. People that, have sold lemons, right? For instance, on a used car sales line, like they know they're selling a bad car. They know it's got a problem. For you to have, I would hate to be them, because to have to fake it when you know this. I bought a BMW that had an oil leak problem that they didn't tell me about, by the way, in Jacksonville, Florida. I still have the car, by the way. Still have the car all these years later because I really wanted this car. They didn't disclose this problem. I can't imagine being that sales rep, knowing that he was selling me something that had a problem. It had a gasket leak that they did not disclose. Terrible. Now, I didn't know that till 2 years later, so whatever. My point is, what you're selling has to be authentic. It has to be for you real. And if it's not, then you'll always deal with this fear that comes up in the moment of asking for the money.
Yeah,
And
like you don't
yeah,
believe in what you're selling.
that's right.
And
That's
and
right.
that really ties into what I was feeling in the beginning, because I had no self-confidence in my ability to deliver a standalone business result. Like, I always had a company to work for and that environment to do it in. So of course I was going to be successful because I had the resources. But now I'm out here on my own. And if I don't build that website right, or if I can't figure out why it's not rendering a certain way on mobile or whatever was going on way back then I'm in trouble. I think that anxiety can come from your disbelief in knowing you can deliver the result, in knowing you can provide a quality experience for your clients and customers. And that's very apparent in the beginning. In fact, I was working with one individual and we did a KISS marketing map, and he had recently been laid off from a job he thought he was going to be at for a long time. And he was like, listen, I've decided I want to go out on my own. And I could tell from the very first consult call I had with him that he wasn't really sold on the idea of being a consultant on his own. He just wasn't sure he was able to do it. Understandable, given the fact that he's always had a job, or many of us have always just had the job, that we never really had to figure out what is it to, I mean, we all watch Shark Tank and we all hear these stories and read books and we're like, well, I can't do that, right? Because business is a big thing. It really is. But what was interesting about this conversation with him is I came right up against that feeling of, I feel like I'm trying to convince him that this will be a good decision for him. And I didn't like how that felt, because I want people to own their decisions and to feel good about moving forward with me. Otherwise, you get buyer's remorse. Otherwise, you end up having a bad experience with that customer or client because they're not a good fit. They weren't ready for you. They weren't ready to make those decisions or to go that direction. But we went ahead and did a KISS marketing map, which is the strategy tool that I build for people. And it's not a huge investment. It's just kind of like a one-time fee. And we spend a couple of weeks together building this thing, and we get agreement and alignment with it. And he was genuinely excited and he felt really good about it. And, but he didn't continue moving on to building the assets that were in the KISS marketing map. We didn't have the ability to move forward and actually build the infrastructure that would put all that out there in the world, enabling him to go and sell and provide his consulting services. It was so disappointing because he was like, listen, I can't continue. I've got to watch my money. I've got these things. He came up with all these excuses. It's like he was confronted by the idea of like, and I'm just guessing, I have no idea if this is really what's going on with him or not, but he was confronted by the ideas like, this is me. This is only me, and I'm the one who has to bring this to fruition. What made me think about this is based on what you were talking about, disbelief, like not believing in yourself or that you can actually deliver value and make money on your own without all this infrastructure around you, can be very intimidating, and it starts showing up in those early sales conversations. So what are some of those actions that people can take to really think those things through and try to head that off once they're beyond the understanding of like, all right, here's my attitude about sales. Now let's look at me and what are my, because you said they make it about themselves, and that's where the trap doors are. So talk more about that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so the very nature of a sales call, and what I mean by nature is what are the characteristics and traits of a sales conversation, right? That dialogue that we have. First of all, one of the biggest mistakes, top three, I'd say, mistakes that people make on a call, and this is something you can stop doing, and you've heard it before, I promise you have, which is, we have two ears, one mouth. We're supposed to listen a lot more than we speak, even on a sales call. And keeping that, keeping yourselves true to that is difficult because you're trying to, not necessarily because you get into convince mode, but we get into like, the more features and value I give them, the the more likely they'll buy. Let me give them all the reasons to buy. Let me pepper them with all the reasons to buy. I will give them so much value it'll be impossible to say no. Okay. Well, careful, right? Because you are definitely overpromising, and it'll be difficult unless they're paying you a ridiculous amount of money and you're hiring a team to fulfill on every promise you just made, right? So listen more. Now, I have this kind of in my mind, and this is not the truth, but in my mind, here's how it lives for me. There's an antidote to fear and to getting nervous in a sales call. There's an actual antidote for it. And the antidote is curiosity. Education Week did this study on kids, and this is a popularized meme out there, actually, a little video of a child playing with blocks on a desk, and they with a parent, and there's another adult that walks into the room and speaks very angrily and in like a very angry tone, and then they stay in the room, and the kid just silly like stops playing with the blocks. They don't, a minute ago they were like looking at different pieces and how does this fit and da da da, and that curiosity, that engagement slows down, practically stops because of this fear that's now present in this child. And you're talking about a 1.5-year old. So fear kills off curiosity, and the reverse is also true. Curiosity helps quell the fear. And curiosity forces you to have your attention on them, not on how you sound, how you look, how great of a question you came up with, how smart you sound, how competent you sound, how confident you sound. Think about all the things that people are so busy at trying to be different, be better, all the things, as opposed to really having their attention on the person. You're there to help them. You're there for them. Get curious, get curiously engaged. And that's what I call being in dialogue. That's why I use that word. It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. So ask, and it's like, well, how do I find the best questions to ask? One of the best tips, now here's a tip. One of the best tips I ever got in a sales training from a guy named Paul Bramson. I think he still has a sales training company based out of Georgia. And he taught us this way of asking questions that was like really it was so impactful because I then it forced me to keep my attention on them, is why it was so impactful. It was stay with the same line of questioning as long as you can until moving on to the next line of questioning. So the ability, the skill, really, because it's practiced, the skill to stay with a line of question. Meaning, if I'm talking to a company about their succession plan, right? Like how are they, what's going to happen over the next 15 years? It's something I do with all my clients because they're always building a future. Stay with that line of like who's going to do what do the departments look like? Okay, great. What's their current roles? Are they growing out of those roles? Like I keep asking questions about what they've thought about in that specific department or specific area, until I've exhausted any questions, and now I really know about that department. In fact, I've allowed them to think about things that they've never thought about before. because they've never been asked. And that gets into what we were talking about in the first section, which was creating this like ability to step into a gap that there was an unrecognized gap. So I'd say to sum it up, it's curiosity. Generating authentic curiosity. Because I've also had people ask a bunch of questions because they're going through some script of asking questions. Well, that's not going to work. Because
And it's so highly detectable too, isn't it?
well, it is, and it's funny you say that because I was going to mention this. This term called mirror neurons. We have mirror neurons that detect fear,
Mhm.
that tell us, and unfortunately for us, for anyone that's trying to sell, um, people can detect that fear subconsciously, and what it makes them think is you're lying about something, you're not being truthful about
The
something.
BS detector.
The BS detector, and it's there for everyone.
Mhm.
Our amygdalas help, or our brains are built for that. They're wired for. Am I about to get taken advantage of here?
Yeah. Mhm.
They, when who you are is giving those kind of vibes to someone, it comes off as insecurity. Comes off as you're lying about something, not being honest about something, and it just puts people's guard up.
What's really interesting, I love that curiosity, by the way. What's really interesting is and I learned this from Eric Schulman, who was my Sandler trainer way back. And he said, we buy like we sell like we buy. So if we're already dubious about a salesperson, we're going to feel like that person thinks we're being dubious. That first part that we talked about is so important to get clear about what you really are thinking and then write a new story. Sit down and say, okay, there's two parts to this that I'm thinking is like a prompt slash takeaway for my listener. The first part is like really just write down or type or record or whatever. What are salespeople in your mind? If you had to describe them and the behavior and your attitude, everything in that universe of how I perceive sales. What do I feel when I get taken advantage of or when I'm manipulated or how do I know I feel that way? All those things. If this is really an issue, if you really feel like you're coming into a sales conversation with these preconceived notions, then you're going to be carrying all that baggage with you into the conversation. It'll be like there are 10 other people in there with you and your prospect. That's the first part. Figure out what that is and then just do some damage to it. Say, what do I really want to believe to be true about a sales opportunity, about growing my business? That's the first part, I think, is a good prompt. The second one is you really need to lecture yourself or write to yourself and say, I'm really good at what I do. I really know my stuff. I have done this for so many people. I can save people money. I can make them healthier. I can make them more confident, whatever, fill in the blank. And you need to convince yourself that you are worthy of selling whatever it is you're selling, because wherever you're at in that point of life, you have generated so much value, so much experience, so much knowledge, and so many people skills that you do have what it takes to have a sales conversation, to provide a value proposition to someone, to really get them to see that you're being genuine and authentic. So those are two good prompts that I took away from that. And there's one more thing that I wanted to say that's kind of on the tail end of your monologue just a moment ago. And that is following that line of questioning until you've pretty much exhausted it. That's a really interesting way to put it because, and I think this is what makes me, not to brag or whatever, but I'm pretty awesome at this. But when I get on the phone with somebody and start having that conversation where I'm asking those questions, most people, and this is another thing for my listener, are you like this? Are you afraid to ask an uncomfortable question? Are you afraid to make that prospect uncomfortable? Because those questions, I'm getting more goosebumps again, those probing questions say two things. One, obviously you care, you want to know, and you want them to have a breakthrough. But also, the fact that you're asking that means that you have the courage and you care enough and you know how to solve a problem that they're having because you're going to that place. You're going to that dark place. You're going to that uncomfortable place where they don't want to admit that they've hired their nephew and they're getting away with everything and everybody in the company has a chip on their shoulder because of the nepotism, right? Whatever the situation is, you've got to have the cojones to go in and ask the probing questions. And I think that was in line with what you were saying about
Totally.
just exhaust that topic. And it's not
Yeah.
to beat a dead horse, it's to get down into the meat. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a call, and this may come off in a not so great way, but where I've had people get really emotional because of the way I asked questions. And it wasn't to get them to be emotional or to trigger them or to get them upset. It was about like, listen, I care about how this is impacting you. It might have even been something that was related to not what I could fix. But that's where we ended up because that's where the trail led through the probing questions. So I think that there, and I want you talk about this as far as ways that people can get more comfortable going to the places where it's not so pleasant, maybe, like, well, what is that costing you? But not in a salesy way, right? Because there's a way to do it where you're really genuinely being authentic and you're asking to understand as well as to hopefully create a space where there's an opportunity, whether it's a breakthrough for them or whether it's just a clearer understanding of, oh, I never really looked at my situation that way. And if I got rid of that, then all this would open up. I mean, you have no idea until you go and you start digging.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's so good, Terry. You can you can never, and I this is a never. Like really try to make this a never. Put this in your never bag, right? Assume where someone's going to locate their value for what you offer. You don't know what they're going to value most about what you have to offer. That's why we pepper all the value propositions, all the values and benefits, features, values, benefits, until one hopefully hits.
It's so good.
No, it's ask questions until something moves them, something shifts, something, their eyes, there's a sparkle, there's a moment where they're like, yeah, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Bingo. You've now identified, uncovered something they value that you didn't know they valued. The quality of your questions are going to be 10 times more important than the quantity of your questions. So that's something you have to really do some deep thinking about, hopefully not by yourself, because you're in your echo chamber about your products and services. You're the expert. So that's important to flush out those questions with someone, an expert like Terry Property, maybe, that would be able to help you with those, identify those questions. No,
Yeah.
but really,
Yeah.
makes a difference. And then, one of my favorite quotes of all time is by this guy named Emerson. And he said, something to the effect of, who you're being is speaking so loudly, I can hardly hear the words you're saying.
Interesting. Wow. I love Emerson.
Let that set in. See, we're so worried about what to say, having the perfect thing to ask, having the perfect place to go, having our script perfected,
Looking
memorized.
good. That's the
Right?
looking good, man.
The vanity, which then
Yeah.
comes back to the thing I said earlier, your attention's on you. That's
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about how you come off, how you present. I was working with my 16-year-old in the living room this morning for an argument, a presentation he was doing today with a slide deck and the whole thing at high school. And I was like, look, this is about the topic. This is about the importance of the topic, not about you. It's, don't you want people to get the importance of health insurance and the over incorporated? It was something about healthcare and providing health insurance for employees. And I was like, if you're connected to making a difference and impacting this person positively, and your product and services happen to do that, wouldn't you want them to have the full opportunity to discover how that might happen?
Wow. That's great. I love that last bit that you just said because it made me think of when God, this is great. We need to have our own show where it's just you and me all the time.
Sure.
Because we just kind of riff off of each other. It's great.
Do it.
But no, it reminded me of oh my God, this is so good. I was working on, I don't know, my third book or something. I'm writing my book, and I write nonfiction and stuff. And I remember I had my friend Drew Westphere. If you're listening, I love you. I miss you, baby. You're the best writing buddy I ever had. And anyway, we were both supporting each other and writing our books. Very informal, just like hanging out, have coffee, blah, blah, blah. And he would read something, and then I would be like hand wringing, like, well, what about this? And I got to do that. And he said something that still to this day, I could hear his voice say it in my kitchen eating area, my eating kitchen. We were sitting at the table. I'll never forget, like the whole setting was like still live in my brain. And he said, you have to allow the reader to come to their own conclusion. And that's exactly what you just said, just in the sales context. And that's really what it's about. And I think that's why scripts and those kind of mechanical gyrations that a lot of people feel they have to go through are just props, because they get in the way. It's like you're forcing the decision on that person. And that's where the manipulation comes from. That's where the commission breath comes from. That's where all of those things that give us such a bad taste in our mouth about sales and being sold, right, is just a bad thing. And it really doesn't have to be that way. And because there's plenty of those people out there doing it that way, you will have even more of an opportunity as a solopreneur to stand out and create an experience of a conversation that has curiosity, that allows them to fill the void with their responses, with their wish lists, and with what's missing for them, in a way that can really combine both of what you're looking for in
Yeah.
working together or helping each other move forward from where you're at. So I love every bit of it.
Totally, totally. Is it Mel Robbins? Yeah. So the book "Let Them," did she write? Who's the author of "Let Them"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just just got like our job as people that are solopreneurs that have something to sell, something that we have a product or service that costs money, and that's what we trade for our time and what we do. If we just first in those conversations, in those dialogues with our prospective customers, if we get them and then let them. First, you got to get them.
Yeah.
And to truly get them, you've got to have questions. You've got to do some homework. You've got to like really get to know
Understand
their
them. Yeah.
concerns, understand them, get them, and then let them buy. Just let them. It's mostly just get out of the way. It really is.
Yeah.
It's just get out of the way. I used to lead seminars, right? I used to lead these big weekend long seminars, and the end of the 3-day thing, the last event, had a sales component to it, like selling not only the next program, but also the people that you brought with you were to buy into the program that you just did, right?
Yeah.
And inevitably, that's the thing that I was the worst at, was the Tuesday night. That was the metric that I always missed. It was like people didn't register for whatever reason, right? And it took me, Terry, when I tell you, it took me forever to get to the bottom of why that was happening. I mean, I was incessantly practicing on Mondays or on our off day. I would go into the place, into the convention hall, and I would print out smiley faces. Blue ones were people that hadn't bought yet, yellow ones were people that had already bought. And I would practice and practice. And you know what I ultimately got to was that they just wanted the same guy that led their amazing weekend to be the same guy that led on Tuesday night to their people that they brought with them. And it breaks my heart, actually, if I think about it. Like, I think about the thousands and thousands of people that entrusted me to reveal and to facilitate on Tuesday night the miracle and the value and the transformation that I provided that happened over the weekend. Uh, that they make that same feeling that I make, that same feeling available, that experience available on Tuesday night, and the number of people that I did not do that for, thousands, because I was making it more about the result
Hmm.
and me
Yeah.
making the mark, hitting the score, the three, like that's like a basketball player having their attention on the scoreboard instead of the game.
Yeah.
And that is where my attention was. So I think, the degree to which we as solopreneurs have our attention on our scoreboard as opposed to them, who's in front of you, is the degree to which we'll keep failing because we will trigger those mirror neurons over there. They will recognize and sniff out that this is really not about them.
Yeah.
This is not about their business. This is not about what matters to them. This is not about what will make a difference for them. This is not about what's going to transform their business. No, this is about you getting a sale.
Love it.
And that's the difficult part about sales, Terry, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, this is your paycheck. You will get paid as a result of that. But it can't be it can't be for that.
I think that's the bottom line for the whole concept around being a solopreneur, selling yourself,
Yes.
and knowing that you're going to eat or not eat as a result of a successful conversation with a
That's right.
prospect. And I think that can be intimidating. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. And what I'd like for you to do, because I know it's in there, is I'd like for you to address my listener directly and give them what you feel they need to hear regarding the summary of this two-part conversation we've been having.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, in the world of solopreneurs, it's just even in the word solo, it can feel lonely, right? Solo, you're on an island out there. Um, I'd say that, one of the things that I do to keep myself in the zone is I have a little notebook, first of all, a little notebook on my computer that has little stories about some of the triumphs that I've had uh, with my clients. These are some of you have testimonials on your website, but that's all fine. Whatever it is that gets gets it going for you, gets your heart beating a little faster, gets you moved, gets you teared up even at some of the things that you've produced that you're the most proud of. There's a handful, by the way. I mean, one, two, three that just are so strongly there that when I think about them, it restores me to who I am for myself, why I do what I do. It's restorative. And every time I have the opportunity to do that out there with people, I'm reminded of this could be the next one. This could be the next opportunity. This could be the next great story to tell. And that moves me because when I'm really connected to someone and I really feel strongly about this is going to do it, this is going to make the difference for you, it moves me. I get, I call myself a futurist, because I'm seeing a future with them, with this person. I'm seeing a future that I know we can realize and accomplish together. And it sometimes becomes so clear on a call, like this is the pathway. I can see it, and I light up, and they light up, and we can see it. And then, are there things to do? Yeah, you betcha. There's a lot of actions to take, right? So find a way to find your resonance, your spirit, your who you are, your calling, your purpose. You say a lot of your raison d'etre, whatever the French word for your purpose, right? That try to find that and keep that present for yourself. Know you're not alone. Build a community. Have people like Terry, people that are trusted advisors, people that have been through the of it and can relate to your experience. You are definitely not alone.
I love that. It's almost felt like a blessing. I think that's awesome because you kept it very focused on positivity and opportunity. And it's like vision casting.
Mhm.
And
Mm,
I love every word
mm.
that came out of your mouth for this two-part episode of My Solopreneur Life. And I can't thank you enough for being here and having this conversation with me. I love you a
Yeah,
bunch.
love you too. Thanks, Terry.
Well, I know you're disappointed, but that's it for this episode. Listen, the great news is there's another one coming, so stay tuned. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you do the prompt if this episode had a prompt and you get that homework done because you're going to be a better solopreneur. How's that for a maternal finger shaking at you? Hey, listen, thanks so much for being here, for giving me time of your day, and, for taking it on. So if you want to learn more and stay connected with me, just head on over to mySolopreneurLife.com. Thanks a bunch. See you soon. That was pretty good. I think I'll keep that one.